Jacob Reynolds was a man who built his restaurant business from the ground up. Years ago, he opened his first small bistro with big dreams. Over time, his restaurant chain grew across the state. From the outside, everything looked perfect. Inside, he had a feeling that something was wrong. He started receiving bad reviews for one specific branch, his busiest location. Customers complained about bad service, cold food, and rude staff. Jacob was confused. This branch used to do, well, what changed? Instead of sending an inspector or a manager, Jacob decided to find out the truth himself. He wanted to see things with his own eyes, so he made a secret plan, shaved his beard, wore old clothes, and gave himself a new name, Jay, he told his top manager that he wanted to work undercover for 1 week. Only the top management team knew about it. No one at the restaurant was allowed to find out. He showed up at the restaurant one Monday morning as Jay, the new kitchen helper. The general manager, Brian, introduced him quickly and then walked away. No warm welcome. No real training. Just thrown into the kitchen with the words, "Follow what the others do." Jay's first shock came within the first hour. The kitchen was hot, loud, and full of stress. Workers shouted over each other, dishes piled up fast, and the chef looked tired and annoyed. One cook, a man named Luis, guided him a little. "Watch out. Don't get in their way," he whispered while pointing at the waitstaff. "They blame everything on us when something goes wrong." Jay kept quiet and worked hard. He washed dishes, carried trays, chopped vegetables, whatever was asked. He wanted to blend in, observe, and understand what was happening in his restaurant. It didn't take long for him to notice the cracks. The team was broken. There was no teamwork. The kitchen staff didn't trust the waiters. The waiters treated the kitchen like it was beneath them. One waiter in particular stood out, Kyle. He was loud, always complaining, always blaming others when orders were delayed. Jay saw Kyle yelling at a dishwasher just because a plate had a tiny chip. Another time, Kyle made fun of a new waitress in front of a customer. No one said anything, not even Brian, the manager. But there was one person who caught Jacob's attention in a good way. Her name was Alina. She was a waitress who worked quietly, always polite to everyone, even when others were rude to her. Jay noticed that she often stayed late, helped others, and smiled through the chaos. She was kind to him, even though he was just a helper. During a short break, Jay sat outside behind the restaurant to drink water. Lena came out too, holding a sandwich. She offered him half. "You're the new guy, right, Jay?" she asked kindly. "Yes, it's my first day," he replied, taking the sandwich. "It gets easier." "The first few days are rough," she said with a soft smile. "Is it always this stressful?" Jay asked, trying to sound casual. Alina sighed. "Yeah, the manager doesn't care. Kyle runs the front like he owns the place. People are quitting every week. I stay because, well, I have 2 kids. I don't have many options." Jay nodded. He didn't want to ask too many questions, too. Soon, but her honesty touched him. Later that day, he saw something strange. The tip jar near the counter was full during the lunch rush. Jay saw Alina serve a large group of customers who left a generous tip. After they left, she smiled and walked toward the jar, but Kyle stepped in front of her. He chatted with her for a moment, then quickly took the jar and walked toward the back. Something didn't feel right. Jay kept watching from the kitchen. Kyle looked around, then slipped some money into his own apron pocket before returning the jar to its place. Alina didn't see it. She was busy cleaning a table. Jay felt a knot in his stomach. Did he just see a waiter steal another employee's tip? It was just a small moment, but it said a lot. He remembered the reviews that talked about poor service and cold attitudes. He now understood that the staff wasn't just tired, they were being treated unfairly. And worse, the ones who tried to be honest, like Alina, were being taken advantage of. Jay kept quiet for the rest of the shift. Didn't want to blow his cover yet. He needed to be sure. Maybe it was just a one-time thing. Maybe he misunderstood. But deep down, he knew what he saw. By the end of the day, Jay was exhausted. His feet hurt, his back ached, and his heart was heavy. As he walked out of the restaurant, he looked back at the building. This was his business. His name was on the menu. And yet, the people inside were struggling, hurting. and being mistreated while he sat in a comfortable office all these years. He promised himself one thing before he went to bed that night. He would come back tomorrow as Jay. He would work, watch, and learn more. And when the time was right, he would do something that would change everything for the people who deserved better. But for now, he would stay quiet, blend in, and keep his eyes open, because sometimes the only way to fix what's broken is to see it from the inside. The next morning, Jacob's still undercover as Jay arrived at the restaurant before sunrise. The kitchen smelled of bleach and cooking oil. A sleepy Luis nodded at him while slicing onions. Jay put on his apron and got to work without a word. But his mind wasn't focused on the dishes or the food prep. He kept thinking about what he saw the day before, Kyle slipping tip money into his pocket when no one was looking. Jay had managed restaurants for years. He knew how important tips were for the staff, especially the servers. Many of them lived off those tips. And for someone to take what didn't belong to them, especially from someone like Alina, who worked so hard it bothered him deeply. That day, Jay decided to watch more carefully. He didn't want to jump to conclusions. And so, he observed everything. The breakfast shift started slow. Alina greeted a few customers kindly, while Kyle mostly leaned against the counter scrolling on his phone. Jay noticed that Kyle only got active when he saw big groups coming in or when the manager, Brian, walked by. Kyle would suddenly become friendly, fast-moving, and even crack a few jokes. As soon as Brian left or went back to his office, Kyle's smile disappeared. Jay worked silently, but kept watching. Around 11 a.m., a group of office workers came in. They sat in Elena's section. She welcomed them warmly, took their orders, and served their food quickly. The customers laughed, enjoyed their meals, and before leaving, dropped a big tip in the jar near the register. Jay was watching from behind the prep table as Kyle walked over, picked up the jar, looked around, and again, just like yesterday's, lipped some of the bills into his pocket before setting the jar back. Alina, once again, missed the moment because she was helping another customer carry out a takeout order. Now Jay was certain it wasn't a mistake. Kyle was doing it on purpose. He was targeting tips that weren't his. Worse, Jay had a strong feeling that Kyle had done this many times before. During their short break, Jay sat at the same spot outside behind the restaurant. Alina came out again, holding her lunch in a small plastic box. "You're still here?" he said with a soft laugh. "Yeah," Jay replied, surprised I lasted a day. Alina smiled. "Honestly, little this place eats people alive. We've had 4 helpers quit in the last 2 weeks. Why is that?" he asked carefully. "They say the same thing. Too much stress, not enough kindness. You saw how Kyle talks to people, right?" Jay nodded. "Yeah, he seems pretty harsh." Lena sighed. "Harsh is one word for it. But the real problem is, we can't complain. Brian always defends him. They're friends. They worked together at another restaurant before this one, so if anyone complains, they just say we're being sensitive." Jay stayed silent, letting her talk. "Last week," she continued, "I'm pretty sure one of my tips went missing. Table told me they left something for me, but I never saw it. When I asked about it, Kyle said I must have imagined it." Jay felt anger rise inside him, but he didn't show it. "That's not right," he said quietly. Alina nodded. "It's not, but I've got bills, rent, and kids. I can't afford to quit right now, so I just try to keep my head down and survive." Jay looked at her. She had tired eyes, but a strong heart. She reminded him of his own mother, who worked in a diner to raise him and his brother after their father left. He couldn't believe someone like Alina was being treated unfairly, especially in a restaurant with his name on the sign. That evening, the dinner rush came in like a storm. The kitchen was swamped, orders were piling up, and people were shouting. Kyle yelled across the restaurant when food was a few minutes late, blaming the cooks even though the delay was because he forgot to send the order in. Luis rolled his eyes but kept his head down. At one point, a customer called over the manager, Brian, and complained that the server was rude. Jay watched as Brian smiled at the customer, promised a free dessert, then walked straight to Kyle and gave him a pat on the back. No warning, no questions. Just smiles. That was when Jay knew that Kyle felt untouchable. And Brian wasn't just ignoring the problem, he was part of it. Back at home that night, Jacob sat in his small apartment, thinking. He opened his notebook and began writing. He made notes about what he had seen, dates, times, details about the tip jar. He made a list of workers who seemed honest, like Alina and Luis, and those who abused their position. He needed a plan. But he also needed proof. He called one of his trusted executives late that night and spoke in a quiet voice. "I need 2 things, Jacob said. Security footage from the front of the restaurant, especially the tip jar area. I need a small hidden camera placed behind the counter where the tips are kept." "Understood," the executive said. "Should I alert the district manager?" "No," Jacob replied. "Not yet. The fewer people who know, the better." The next morning, Jacob returned to the restaurant as Jay again. This time he walked in with a quiet fire inside him. He worked hard, just like before, but his eyes missed nothing. Kyle didn't change his behavior, laughed too loudly, flirted with customers, and rolled his eyes at the staff. He made fun of Luis when he dropped a plate, then blamed Jay when an order came out late even though it was Kyle who had forgotten to send the ticket. But now, Jay didn't feel small. He didn't feel helpless. He knew who he really was and he knew what he was going to do. Just needed a little more time. At the end of that shift, something unexpected happened. Lena came over with a cup of coffee and handed it to Jay. "No, you're new," she said, "but you're one of the few people here who actually works with respect. So thank you." Jay smiled and accepted the cup. "You deserve better, Elena," he said softly. She looked puzzled from this place. "From life," he replied, "and I think that change is coming, sooner than you think." She didn't understand what he meant, but she smiled anyway. Jay finished his coffee in silence, watching the tip jar from across the room. Tomorrow, he thought, tomorrow I'll start turning this around, and for the first time in days he felt hopeful. Jacob, still acting as Jay, entered the restaurant early again, wearing the same faded clothes and tired shoes. But today something was different. He knew that small hidden cameras had been quietly placed near the tip jar by his trusted executive last night after closing. The goal was simple: gather proof. No accusations. It's just clear truth. As he walked into the kitchen, Luis waved at him with a friendly nod. "You're still here, huh? That's a good sign." Jay smiled, still standing. By now, Jacob was no longer just watching. He was listening. He paid attention to every whisper, every complaint, every act of kindness, and every moment of disrespect. Each day, the same patterns repeated themselves. Kyle continued to act like the king of the restaurant. He barked orders, laughed too loudly, and treated others like they didn't matter. That morning, Alina was busy preparing for a large reservation. A birthday party was coming in around noon. She took great care arranging the table, placing flowers, checking chairs, and folding napkins neatly. Jay helped her without saying much. She glanced at him and smiled. "Thanks, Jay. Not many people help without being asked." "You do more than most here," Jay replied. Alina shrugged. "It's the little things that matter." The party arrived right on time. Alina managed everything like a professional. The guests laughed, clapped, and had a great time. One lady hugged Alina before leaving and walked straight to the tip jar. She dropped in a wad of cash with a smile. Jay's eyes narrowed. Alina was still clearing plates when Kyle, once again, walked to the jar like he owned it. He glanced around, thought no one was watching. Gust. Like before, slipped money into his apron pocket. Jay took a deep breath. The camera would have captured it all. His heart raced, not out of anger this time, but because justice was now one step closer. Later, during the break, Jay and Alina sat outside. She looked a little tired but proud. "You did amazing today," Jay said. "Thanks. But I'll probably still get blamed if anything went wrong," she said with a half smile. "Brian doesn't exactly like me." "Why?" "I don't flirt. I don't play favorites. I just work. I think that makes me boring to them." He shook his head slowly. "You're the kind of person any business would be lucky to have." Alina raised an eyebrow. "You talk like a boss," she teased. "Maybe you ran your own place before," Jay laughed. "Maybe I did. After their break, Jay returned to the kitchen. He watched as Kyle snapped at a new server for accidentally mixing up 2 orders. The server, a young man named Adam, looked terrified. "Are you blind or just stupid?" Kyle said loudly, in front of customers. Jay clenched his fists, but stayed silent. He couldn't reveal himself yet, but he made a mental note Kyle wasn't just stealing tips, he was also creating fear and chaos. And Brian, the manager, allowed it all. Later that day, Jay quietly pulled Brian aside and spoke to him in a friendly tone. "So, how's everything going in the restaurant?" Brian looked confused. "Why are you asking? You're a kitchen helper." "Just curious," Jay said with a grin. Brian crossed his arms. "Things are fine. Staff complain too much. If you ask me, Kyle's the only one who knows what he's doing." Jay replied. "And the tips, do they go straight to the servers?" "Of course," Brian said quickly. "Why do you ask that?" Jay shrugged. "I just heard someone say they were missing some. Probably a misunderstanding." Brian's eyes narrowed. "Who said that?" "No one important," Jay said calmly. "Forget it." Jay walked away, but now he was sure Brian knew what Kyle was doing, or at least suspected it and was covering for him. After his shift, Jay went home and met with his executive in a small office nearby. They reviewed the camera footage from the last 2 days. Everything was clear. Kyle was taking money from the tip jar at least 3 different times. There was also audio of him insulting other staff. "This is more than enough," the executive said. "What do you want to do?" Jacob leaned back in his chair. "Not yet. Give me 1 more day. I want to speak to a few more staff. Want them to know someone cares before we clean house." The next day, Jay arrived at the restaurant and slowly started conversations with people. He asked Luis how long he had been working there. "Almost 3 years, Luis said. "I used to love it here, but things changed ever since Kyle came. It's like we're walking on eggshells." "Why hasn't anyone spoken up?" Luis gave a sad laugh.
"Oh, we did.
"A few times. Brian shut us down every time. Said we were causing drama. One guy who complained too much, he got his hours cut and quit." Jay nodded. He moved to talk to Adam, the new server. "You okay after yesterday?" Jay asked gently. Adam looked up. "Surprised you saw that?" "I did." Adam looked down. "Was just trying to do my job. Kyle humiliated me. I didn't even want to come in today." "Did you tell Brian?" "No point," Adam said. "They're friends." Every story was the same. Every voice confirmed what Jay already knew. The restaurant wasn't broken because of a lack of money or slow business. It was broken because of bad leadership and unfair treatment. Later that evening, Jay helped Alina carry boxes of clean menus to the front. As they walked, she said, "You know, Jay, you're different. I don't know why, but it feels like you actually care." Jay paused and looked at her. "I do," she smiled, but he could tell she didn't understand the weight behind his words. When the day ended, Jay left the restaurant for the last time as an undercover worker. He was done gathering evidence. He was done watching. It was time to step back into his real shoes. It was time for the owner to return not as a mystery worker, but as the man responsible for every person under his roof. Tomorrow, everything would change. The next morning was unlike any other. For the first time in a week, Jacob Reynolds didn't put on his old kitchen clothes. He stood in front of the mirror in a clean blue button-up shirt and dark slacks. He looked like himself again, the real Jacob, the owner of Reynolds Bistro. He had spent days undercover, working side by side with his kitchen team, quietly watching, listening, and learning. Now it was time to reveal the truth and take action. He didn't feel nervous. He felt clear, focused. This wasn't just about one restaurant. It was about setting things right, starting with the people who had been ignored for too long. At 11 a.m., he arrived at the restaurant. This time, he walked through the front doors, not the back. His entrance caught everyone off guard. Some customers looked up in curiosity. A few servers paused mid-step. Brian, the manager, spotted him first. His face froze. "Mr. Reynolds?" Brian walked over quickly, forcing a smile. "This is a surprise. We weren't told." Jacob raised his hand gently. "We'll talk shortly, Brian. Please call a staff meeting." "Right now, everyone kitchen servers, all of them." Brian hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. but he nodded. Yes, sir. Within minutes, the entire team gathered in the dining area. They stood in small clusters, whispering quietly. Some looked confused, others, like Luis and Alina, looked curious. Kyle leaned against the wall with a smirk on his face, clearly unimpressed. Jacob stood in front of them. He looked at each of their faces, slowly, taking his time. Good morning, everyone, he began calmly. I know this is unexpected. Some of you may recognize me, some of you may not. My name is Jacob Reynolds. I'm the owner of this restaurant, and of all Reynolds Bistro locations, the room fell silent. I recently received many complaints about this location. Low customer reviews, high staff turnover, reports of disrespect, missing tips, and more. So I made a choice. I didn't send an inspector. I didn't call for a meeting. I came here myself. The last several days I've been here, working as Jay, a helper in your kitchen. A loud gasp swept through the room. Heads turned. Elena's eyes widened. Luis whispered, No way. Jacob continued, Yes, I've been here. I washed dishes. I cleaned. I chopped vegetables. I listened. And what I found was both disappointing and heartbreaking. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. I saw good people, hard-working people, being treated unfairly. I saw disrespect, fear, and dishonesty. I saw kindness go unnoticed. And worst of all, I saw trust being broken. He turned to Kyle. Kyle, Jacob said firmly, you have been caught on video on multiple days, taking money from the tip jar that didn't belong to you. The smirk vanished from Kyle's face. That's not true, he blurted out. I never. Jacob raised his hand again. There's no need to argue. The camera footage is clear. You took tips that were meant for other servers. More than once, everyone turned to look at Kyle. Some looked angry. Others looked disappointed. And that's not all, Jacob continued. You also insulted your teammates in front of customers. You created fear. You damaged the reputation of this restaurant. Kyle looked around the room. No one came to his defense. Not even Brian. You were terminated immediately, Jacob said firmly. You are not allowed to return to this restaurant, or any of our locations. 2 security team members, who had arrived quietly during the meeting, escorted Kyle out. He didn't say a word. He just walked away, head down, while the room stayed silent. Jacob then turned to Brian. Brian said, his tone calm but firm. As the manager of this location, your job was to protect your staff, support your team, and ensure fairness. But instead, you allowed disrespect and theft to continue. You ignored complaints. You favored friends over workers. That's unacceptable. Brian looked pale. Sir, I didn't know I gave you this position because I trusted you, Jacob interrupted. That trust has been broken. Brian swallowed hard. What happens now? You're suspended immediately. We will review your performance. After that, we'll decide whether you can remain with this company. Jacob turned back to the staff. To the rest of you, I want to say thank you. Especially those of you who worked hard, treated others kindly, and showed respect even when no one was watching. He looked at Alina. Alina, I saw how you managed. A party without help? How you treated customers with care? How you offered food to a new coworker? I saw how you never complained, even when you had every reason to. You are exactly the kind of person we need to lead others. Lena's eyes filled with tears. Starting today, Jacob announced, you are the new assistant manager of this location. Everyone clapped. Alina looked shocked. Me. But you earned it, Jacob said. Not just through hard work, but through heart. He turned to Luis. And Luis, your steady hands and helpful attitude made a big difference. We'll be increasing your pay and discussing more training opportunities for your future here. Luis smiled, speechless. Jacob wasn't finished. We're also upgrading the kitchen. I've already approved new equipment, better lighting, and a better break space. No more broken tools. No more dirty conditions. A buzz of excitement moved through the crowd. Lastly, Jacob said, we are installing a new tip system. All tips will now be automatically tracked, sorted, and given out fairly through the system at the end of every shift. No more jars. No more confusion. People nodded in agreement. It was a new day. I will also personally visit every location more often. No more distance. I want to hear from all of you, not just the managers. He looked around the room, meeting every eye. This place is not just a restaurant. It's a team, and it's time we start acting like one. With that, the meeting ended. People stood still, unsure what to do. Then slowly, they began clapping. It started with Luis, then Alina, then everyone. For the first time in a long time, they felt seen. Jacob stepped back, letting them talk, smile, and laugh. He didn't need applause. He only needed change. Alina walked up to him quietly. "Thank you," she whispered. "I didn't think anyone would ever believe us." Jacob smiled warmly. Sometimes the best way to know the truth is to walk in someone else's shoes. That day, the restaurant didn't just serve food, it served hope, and that hope was just the beginning. The following weeks brought a new energy to the restaurant, one that could be felt as soon as customers walked in. The air was no longer heavy with tension. The servers smiled more. The kitchen laughed again. The difference was clear. A change had begun, and it wasn't just about new equipment or rules. It was about people finally being treated with respect. Jacob returned to the restaurant regularly. It's no longer as Jay, the kitchen helper, but as Jacob Reynolds, the owner, who now cared deeply about what happened beyond the walls of his office. Alina, now the assistant manager, stepped into her new role with a quiet strength. She still served tables sometimes when things got busy, but now she had a voice in decisions. She made sure every shift started with a quick team meeting. She listened to concerns. She even started writing down feedback from the kitchen and bringing it to Jacob every Friday. One day she stood at the center of the staff huddle and said, "I know things have been tough before, but from now on, no one is alone here. We all rise together." The team clapped and nodded. Even new employees like Adam, the young server, now walked taller. He no longer feared being shouted at in front of customers. Luis, the longtime cook, smiled more and even started training a new kitchen, consistent with patience and humor. The broken kitchen machines were replaced within days. A new fryer, a better oven, and a set of sharp knives arrived. The workers were amazed. No more making do with broken tools. Now they could cook with pride and confidence. The tip jar was removed entirely. In its place, an automatic point-of-sale tipping system was installed. Customers now left digital tips, and the system divided them fairly based on shift hours and performance. No more guessing. No more stealing. The money was safe, and the staff could trust the system. One morning, Jacob joined the team for coffee during the quiet hour before the restaurant opened. He sat at a corner table with Alina, Luis, and a few others. They shared jokes and stories. "I still can't believe you were Jay," Luis said, shaking his head. "You were really washing dishes next to me like it was nothing," Jacob smiled. "It reminded me of where I started. I washed dishes in my uncle's diner when I was 16. It's the hardest job in the kitchen, and no one thanks you for it." "I almost quit before you showed up," Alina admitted. "I didn't think anything would change." Jacob looked at her seriously. "You kept going when others gave up. You stood strong, and now you're helping others do the same." Later that afternoon, a food blogger came in to review the restaurant. She had read online that Reynolds Bistro had turned around. Alina took her order and gave her a warm smile. The food came out fast, fresh, and beautifully presented. The blogger noticed how well the team worked together. Every detail seemed to matter now. When the review came out 2 days later, it was glowing. She wrote, "This restaurant used to feel tired and cold. Now, it feels like home. You can tell the people here care." That single review brought in more customers. Tables were full again, especially during lunch and dinner. The revenue climbed back up, but more than that, the spirit of the place had returned. Jacob knew that not all stories end with applause. Running a business wasn't about one big moment, it was about the small choices made every single day. He had made a mistake by staying too far away for too long. But now he was determined never to let that happen again. He made a new policy. Every restaurant in the chain would have a voice hour once a week at a time when staff could talk freely about their concerns, ideas, and needs. No managers allowed to dismiss the talks. Everything would be written down and shared with leadership. Staff feedback would now be part of the restaurant's growth plan. At Reynolds Bistro, it wasn't just about food anymore. It was about trust. 1. Evening, just before closing, Jacob walked into the dining area and saw Alina cleaning a table. She looked tired but content. Busy day? The best kind, she replied. We had a family celebrate a graduation, a couple on a first date, and a birthday. Laughter, smiles, it's been beautiful. Jacob nodded. You've done something amazing here. Lena looked around the room. It wasn't just me. All did this together. He looked at her with pride. Still, I'd like to offer you something more. How would you feel about training to become a full manager? Not just here, but someone who helps lead other locations too. Lena blinked. Are you serious? Barry Jacob replied. You know this place. You know people. We need more leaders like you. Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled through them.
I'd be honored.
As Jacob walked out of the restaurant that night, the streetlights glowed softly. Looked back. Through the window. The staff inside were laughing, stacking chairs, wiping counters, sharing goodbyes. The restaurant he once feared was broken, was now full of life. And he knew something powerful. When a leader chooses to listen, when they walk in their team's shoes, when they lead with heart instead of just rules, that's when real change begins. The Undercover owner came searching. For truth, what he found was a family, and that family was now stronger than ever. The end.